The best cooks don't necessarily know more, they just notice more. When I was 16, I started my first job at a local resort in their banquet kitchen. And it's safe to say that I was pretty anxious to start this job, but I was also really excited and I really appreciated that I had the opportunity in the first place. When I first started, I definitely had imposter syndrome and I just really was kind of lost and I didn't really know where to go. And in this banquet kitchen, there were a number of cooks and chefs who didn't really like that I was there, and they made that very clear to me from the very start. Some of the chefs would specifically do things to make my job a little bit harder and to stress me out a little bit. I think they were just trying to test me, but regardless, as a 16-year-old, with this being my first real job, I was super anxious. But for every chef or cook who didn't want me there and didn't feel like I deserved the job, there were chefs and cooks who took me under their wing and just helped me along my way, and I'll be forever grateful for those chefs. One of these cooks who really took me under his wing and helped me out a lot was named Ogre. And Ogre was a big, tall guy who was pretty quiet, and he really helped me out a lot. I just remember there are a ton of things that he taught me in my time there. And while I was working in this kitchen, it was pretty common for chefs to come up to me and say, "Hey, drop what you're doing and follow me." And usually what they would do is they would take me somewhere, they would grab some kind of produce, and they would say, "Hey, I want you to chop this up, and here's how you're gonna do it." And I would just get to work. So as with any other day, Ogre came up to me and said, "Drop what you're doing and come with me." And so I didn't really think much of it when he said this, and so I stopped what I was doing and I followed Ogre to one of the walk-in coolers that we had in the kitchen. Now these coolers usually just held vegetables and different prep that we had, herbs, all that kind of stuff. And so I figured he was just going to be grabbing a vegetable and telling me how to chop it so I could chop it. But today was a little different. Ogre told me to close my eyes, which I thought was a little weird, and he grabbed a bundle of all of the herbs that we had in the walk-in cooler. And Ogre told me to just take the herbs and tell him what I notice. And I thought this was super weird at the time, but I did what he told me, and so I kept my eyes closed, and he handed me these herbs one by one, pretty much every herb you can think of, and I felt them. I smelled them, tasted them, and told him what I noticed. And I thought that this was just him trying to teach me to identify the different herbs. What I didn't realize at the time is that he was teaching me a much more important lesson. I was sitting down the other day just kind of remembering this moment because it was kind of lost in the back of my mind. And it almost brought me to tears because I realized that Ogre didn't just teach me how to identify herbs. He taught me the skill of noticing, and he taught me that it's important to notice when you're cooking. I think the reason I got so emotional thinking about this memory is that it was a core memory for me in learning how to cook, but also I realized that I'm going to have a number of those mini moments with my children someday. A lot of people think that the best cooks are just born talented and that cooking is just something that you have or you don't. And I think that that couldn't be further from the truth. I think a good cook is able to stop and notice, and then using what they notice, they're able to make the right decisions to make what we would call a delicious meal. And that's the encouraging thing. We can all take time and learn how to notice, and then learn what to do after we notice. You might say that this is just a bunch of philosophical nonsense and it's not very practical, but I would say that it's actually very practical. When we cook and we stop and notice the ingredients we're using, but also the food that we're cooking in the moment, we're able to make adjustments that make the food more delicious. And I think that that's what makes a really amazing cook. So I want to challenge you. This week, while you're cooking, I want you to stop and notice the ingredients you're using. I want you to do what Ogre did in the walk-in cooler that day. I want you to take the ingredient, smell it, see it, feel it, and taste it. And I want you to think about what it is that you're noticing and maybe even write it down. And furthermore, I want you to taste the food that you're cooking as well. What does the ingredient that you added change about the food that you're making? When you add basil to the tomato sauce you're making, how does it change the flavor and the aroma of the tomato sauce? What did it bring to the dish that wasn't there before? And this is also really important for seasoning. The best cooks season their food often, and they also taste their food often. And I would say that two elements that are usually missing from most home cooks' food is salt and acid. Of course, there are other elements that go into making really delicious food, but the two that I see the most are that people usually are scared to season their food, and salt and acid can definitely be intense flavors if you're not careful with them. So this week, while you're stopping and noticing the food that you're cooking, I want you to think, could a little bit of acidity make this taste better? Could a little bit of salt make this taste better? And I want you to consistently taste your food while you're cooking it and ask yourself those questions. Ultimately, as we cook and we build this repertoire of flavors that we notice and aromas that we notice, we build experience, and that experience is what makes a really awesome cook. Ultimately, the best cooks are not the ones who know the most, they're the ones who notice the most. And this is what this channel is going to be about.